At FitFiliate, we're excited to announce the Affiliate Engineering Seminar. Coming soon to an affiliate near you, don't miss this exciting opportunity to create the affiliate of your dreams. Link in show notes or in bio to register. Welcome to the FitFiliate podcast. And welcome back to our latest episode of the FitFiliate podcast. The room seems a little less crowded today. It's just myself and my ever faithful partner in crime, Tony.
Well, first of all, that sounds very anticlimactic because I assure you all of my personalities are here. So we're all in the room.
Buckle up for that.
Yes.
How are you, good sir?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm all the better for seeing your face across my screen.
Oh, I want everybody to know that she's only nice to me on these episodes. Right after she's mean to me the rest of the time.
I thought it was the other way around. But
negative. You've got them all fooled.
Yeah, that's right. People like me. So given it's just the A team back again, I thought that today we'd get back into some of our more regular sort of discussions. And one of the things I've noticed popping up lately is when we have affiliate owners or coaches reach out to us and who are stuck, come to us with, well, what's the plan? What should my plan be? What should my project be? What should my goal be? And I thought it would be good to talk through that process of how we start to unpack that with them and how coaching can reveal that versus here's what your plan should be. Here's what it should look like for you. And I thought that's worth digging in because we probably haven't dug into that a little bit since early days episodes. So I thought I would bring that because it has been pretty prevalent in conversations I've even had in the last week.
Early day episode. What episode are we on?
This will be episode 120.
Wow, we certainly do like to hear ourselves talk, don't we?
No, I don't play it back. I don't hear it at all. But
it's funny. I'll be running in the woods or something, and like my one podcast line, and then all of a sudden I'll hear Lisa take off, and I'm like, and I almost immediately trip over a rock and fall because it scares me.
Yeah.
And then, but then I can't really get to my phone because it's like packed away, so I end up having to listen to the episode. And sometimes I'm like, pretty profound. Appreciate that. And yes, I am definitely complimenting myself, and you're all welcome. Anyway, back to the question. Man's endless search for answers, I suppose. That's what it's not necessarily.
That's a way to summarize.
But humans' endless search for answers. Yeah, I think. Well, outside, it's bigger than the affiliate, right? I think. What is the pressing question of all of eternity? What's the meaning of life? Right? Like, I don't know where it comes from in terms of our belief that answers are outside of us, and I think a lot of that is probably due to learned experiences. As a child, we grow up and we emulate our parents, and the two people that mean the most to us, mom and dad, we tend to, I'm probably going to lose everybody in this conversation, but bear with me, people. We tend to look at them as from a sort of an all-knowing perspective, right? They're bigger than us, they're stronger than us, they're more capable than us, they have more resources, and they are responsible for our safety, our sustenance. And so when I'm hungry, I go to mom and dad. And then I think that leads itself into essentially the same process that ends up going into school, right? We tend to try to look to our teachers as like extensions of our parental units, and we look for some degree of a semblance. And I think that the bonds that we make with the teachers that we do make probably likely have something to do with the similarities that we can find or place in them that mirror something in terms of our parents. And so we tend to believe that they have answers to our future. And truly, through much of the formative years of education, that's probably true, right? Like, we do need to, as humans, amass information so that we can process and, utilize and distribute that information if we need to, but like we learn how to do things. That's essentially probably the meaning of life, right? Which is to learn. The problem, I think, arises though somewhere in the later ends of education where we stop learning to learn and we start learning to possess, right? And what I mean by that, and I've talked about this a lot, but I think we're all conventionally taught, at least in Western education, that knowledge is about ownership. Knowledge is about power and possession. Like, I possess my knowledge. I own that information. And we're taught that because we're not taught to think, we're taught to retain information, right? So my teachers in my later years, particularly, especially in like high school and college, teach me and then test me on my ability to retain information, not my ability to challenge and think critically of that information.
Mhm.
Right? And so we're not really taught to actually question it at all, just remember it. And then we're somehow ranked amongst our peers in terms of how well I can remember that stuff versus my other peers. I'm not sure once you become an adult how that makes any degree of sense to anybody. But I suppose it might separate the people who are intentional versus distracted. So I think that forms the first part of the big problem. And then from there, we're thrust out into the real world, and then we're told to think creatively, right? We're told to figure it out truly, right? Like, you graduate college, it's okay, now go figure it out. Take all that knowledge that you possess and go figure it out, right? And so what does everybody do? They usually typically knock on as many doors as possible with as many, companies as they can, packed with a suitcase full of the information that they have acquired and possessed and they own, and their acronyms and their degrees and their things. And they say, hey, would you like to see my briefcase? And if it looks appealing to you, you can hire me for my briefcase. But even in that conversation, nobody's really thinking about like, can you process information? They only understand how much information that you happen to possess. Right? And so not only do we come out of school ill-prepared to think creatively and critically of life ahead of us, most times we're hired incorrectly for that same problem. Not our ability to think creatively, but based on what knowledge we possess. But then what happens as soon as you get the job? Your employer says, all right, time to get creative. And you're like, what? Error, can't compute. And so you see this conflict happen even in the conventional career path, right? And so those people, though, usually tend to grow up to some degree and end up most common story, hate their job, gain some weight, lose control of their personal life or connections or otherwise, find themselves to be a former fraction of the person they used to be, find a website, CrossFit.com. I could do that. They try doing it. They get their teeth kicked in by it. They do it a handful of times, changes their life. Do you know what they say? Fuck you, boss. I'm out. I'm going to own an affiliate. And they take their briefcase with all their possessed information over to the affiliate and then realize it has no bearing at all in business. And so they seek to replicate high school, college, etc., which is, I need to go find answers. But in the business world, it doesn't work like it does. Well, it doesn't work in the high school world because the only reason it works in high school and college is because you're tested, right? You're validated on the ability you can, but like, doesn't mean that you're better at math. It just means that you can remember the formulas, right? But in the business world, information is not possessed. It is basically processed, right? We need to go look for answers and then take that information, process it through the lens of our situation, right? And our specifics and our parameters and everything we've got going for us, and then implement that and put it into practice. And then use that to solve our problems. But in that conversation, you can see the conflict in what would happen if you think that knowledge is about possessing of information, not your ability to process the information. And so it's not a big surprise why people who move into the career path, leave the career path, and then come to own an affiliate find themselves stuck. But there's another affiliate owner. There's an entire separate affiliate owner, right? The blue ocean ones, who probably didn't go the conventional career path, right? Because they probably didn't have a conventional high school and college path because they were just like, I don't like this thing. It makes me feel a certain type of way about myself. And they probably were more creative, more critical. And they then, if they were lucky, got branded as entrepreneurial, right? They march to their own beat. They're willing to strike out on their own. And really what that means is that they're not interested in possessing information. They're interested in processing information. They see the world for opportunities, not for realities, right? And so, people in the first path were taught that like life in the world around us is about absolutes. A butterfly is a butterfly is a butterfly. Red is red is red. Blue is blue is blue. But people who view the world unconventionally and they take the entrepreneurial path, they say, but how do we know that about a butterfly? Maybe there's more to the story, right? Like, and it's important that people like that exist because like if Charles Darwin didn't come out and say, how do we know that that's true, we wouldn't have ever had natural selection as a theory, right? Like, and so knowledge is always appreciated once it's been completed, right? Like everybody knows the Darwin's theory and they're like, genius, gets it, etc. But like his process was not about retaining and reciting information. It was about thinking creatively of like, how on earth did all these animals get on this random island in the middle of this ocean? all the way out here, right? And then he thought about it and thought about it and thought about it. If he just said, there's a bunch of animals on an island in the ocean, God put them there, that would have been the end of it, right? That would have been absolution. And it's not about a religion thing. It's just that we tend to want to pass things through filters of absolution because we don't want to have to think about its high energy. So that's a lot of words. But the point is that there's two people who end up in the affiliate world: the converts that come from the conventional path, and then the entrepreneurial ones. And the success stories that we see inside the landscape of the affiliate tend to be the ones who see the opportunity that exists inside the affiliate for its creativity, its individuality, and its authenticity. The converts tend to look for the consistency, the similarity, the stability, the processes, the franchise that is the affiliate model, right? And so, and it's not that one's right or wrong; they're just different for many different reasons. But when it comes time to solve your problem, you have to step back and first ask yourself, where are you viewing these problems from, right? Like, because if you're viewing them from an entrepreneurial path, that's awesome, right? Because we can paint all sorts of Picassos, right? If you're viewing it from a conventional path, that's also awesome because at least awareness precedes action, right? So at least you're aware. And it's going to take somebody like a coach, like us, to come in and say, why is this a struggle for you? What do you think the solution looks like? And then they usually respond with exactly what you just said, which is, what should I do? Right? Like, how can I fix this? What's the answer? And then we get to say, remember high school? It's not going to help you here. And they're like,
and it's helping people, I guess. Like we when we have these conversations with people as well, they stumble across that, truth is that they're afraid to actually dream their dreams. They're scared to like dream big. Like, yeah, look, if I can just earn enough to pay my bills every month, like I'll be happy with that. It's like, okay, but what if everything went right? That magic wand question that we famously ask.
what if?
And people are notoriously afraid, bye Tony, to let themselves dream and to explore those dreams and be okay with where you might finish up might not be that dream, but if you didn't have that, you would finish up way shorter than there.
Right.
But making it okay, because it does come back to that school thing, like here's the box that you sit in, and what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a fireman, a teacher, a policeman, or a soldier. Usually they're or an astronaut. They're 5 standard responses. And, they're the things that people think, well, that's what I should be doing, rather than what could I do if everything went right? And it's that reluctance to trust that they can dream something and bring it to life. It's easier to live, work in someone else's dream and work with someone else's parameters.
Yeah. I mean, what is more sad than that reality, in that we all grow up to lose our ability to believe in ourselves, right? Like, and you can challenge me on that if you want, but I mean, I have enough anecdotal evidence to anybody that's listening to this to know that, like, the biggest struggle that we see with everybody that comes in the door isn't pricing. It's not leads. It's not operations. It's not, all the insert X, Y, and Z from the quote unquote playbook. It's their ability to believe in themselves. You're not going to make it in business unless you know that you're the answer. If you continue to believe that somebody's going to come save you, or that the solution is outside of you, you're going to have a hard time. Now, know that I'm not saying that like you're not supposed to go seek information, because remember that the meaning of life is to be a student of life, right? To continue to learn. But the point of learning is to continue to process information, not to seek absolution, right? Not to seek these definitive answers. And so you have to learn. And the beauty of it is that we live in the information age, right? Like everything is a keystroke away. Too much is a keystroke away at this point. But like, there's no reason to not have the answer now when you can have it in a split second, right? So it's almost upon further exploration, when you say, well, why is the struggle for you? They'll likely say, I don't know what to do. The answer for me usually is like, oh, that's bullshit. You absolutely know what to do. You just don't trust in your ability to either A, find that answer, or B, the conviction to believe in yourself enough to enact that answer. Because I know you can Google right now, insert XYZ problem, and you will find a hypothetical solution to it. You just need to pass it through the lens and the filter of your own security and your own insecurity, and to know whether or not it's a good idea or a bad idea. And the only way that you can know that answer as it applies to your business is, does the solution that this information poses move me closer to my vision of success? If so, then I move forward. But that's the second part of the conversation. You must know, like you just said, must know what your idea of the future looks like, not what my version of your idea of the future looks like or somebody else's, right? You must know what your life wants to look like, so that when you do go process information, you can go learn really cool new things, new exciting things, and get excited about it. Because like, how fun is it to learn new things? It's amazing. But the best part of doing that is to take something new and novel that you learn and then pass it through the kernel of what it means to be you, through your perceptions, your experiences, and your situation. And then think about the possibilities, right? Like how I could use this thing, how I could do this, how I could put this into practice, how I could implement this. And then how terrible is it that most people, once they get to that phase, say, I could never.
And I think that's where people run the risk of going, well, I'm just going to get the next certificate. I'm going to get the next level. That'll be the thing that fixes, because I'm acquiring knowledge, which they don't then often implement. It's like, this was just a step towards whatever the thing they think that's going to lead to. But, as we've talked about with coaches, it doesn't matter how many pieces of paper you have. It doesn't necessarily mean people are going to come fall at your feet and throw dollars at you. But I think they see that as a way of validating rather than doing the believing and doing that hard stuff. It's like, this validates me because I'm a 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, whatever. So therefore, that's my endpoint. When really, as you just said, that's the start of the journey. Is like, I've now got this super cool information. How do I, implement that, and how do I fit it to mold where I want to go, and what parts do I want to use, and what parts do I not, rather than that's the be all end all.
Yeah, I mean, but when you look at that hypothetical situation you just posed, the levels, etc., what does that look like? What high school, college, right? Acronyms, degrees, papers that I can hang on the wall, that when people walk in, I don't need to tell them how fancy I am. I got this foil printed paper behind me that says that somebody gave me a gold star, right? Like, we started getting gold stars. Oh, I got a thumbs up. And I'm stuck. Why am I stuck like that? There we go. I got a gold star when I was like 5, and then I just started doing things that got more gold stars because that felt good, right? And the point is that nothing about school really lives to teach you to be creative. In fact, you're mostly a problem when you can't fit into the box of the other kids, because like no classroom really wants the one weird kid. Right. It's much better when all 20 or 25 kids are doing the same thing at the same time, because that takes a lot less energy for the teacher. And listen, this whole conversation is hard because I'm not anti-school. I'm not really anti-teacher. I love teachers. I think that like the world needs more of them and better of them, not less of them, and not more standardization of them. But let's be honest, school has slowly degraded over time as teachers have been forced to be less creative themselves. Like, they're punished for it, right? Like, anytime a teacher comes in and they try to change up the lesson plan to create and force some creativity, the school districts come along and say, hey, pump the brakes. Like, that's a wild card. I got to tell the state, the government, et cetera, that you are going to be the same because they want to make sure you're doing a good job, right? And so
Mm.
it's no surprise why the teacher, who's validated by her ability to do the same thing as all of her peers, then teaches you to do the same thing as all of your peers. And then when you come out of school, well, what do you look to do? The same thing as all of your peers. And that's why the world has red ocean businesses and blue ocean businesses, right? And that's why most businesses, 86% of them, are line item extensions of other businesses, because all of us were raised the exact same way. Unless like you were lucky and like you went to a Montessori school and were homeschooled and you were taught to think critically and creatively your whole life. But then those kids, fortunately, if they don't grow up to become entrepreneurs, they're screwed, because then they go into the conventional workforce and they're like, let's get creative. And employers are like, you seem risky. Like, follow the rules until I need you to not follow the rules. But I'm going to be the one that decides that. Right. So this is a lot of, I think, philosophical parts of it. And I don't mean to lose anybody in the theory of it, but you have to understand that when it's time to seek anything, right? Like, let's say I'm starving. You probably should start with asking yourself, am I? Because what is actually real, right? Like, more often than not in the nutrition space, most people who are hungry are bored. We know that, right? They're not actually hungry, right? We know that most people who are seeking nutrition guidance are carrying more than enough body fat to go 3 days without needing to eat, right? And so as long as they're drinking water, they're probably either bored or they're underhydrated, right? So let's try to do something entertaining first, or let's try to drink some more water. And I bet you those hunger pains disappear, because as you're bored, you're like, what can I do for stimulus, right? And so my point of bringing that up is that if you didn't question, am I actually hungry, you would probably eat, and then you would make the problem worse, right? And so the same thing happens here. You have to start with, why am I feeling this way? Why is it a struggle for me? And how can I myself solve this problem? Because as we move into the actionable part of this conversation, you have to start with the theory first. You have to start with the philosophy of it all first, so you can better understand yourself, right? Like, that's, I think a lot of the conversations that we have publicly on the podcast and the things that get forward facing in what we do comes off and treads dreadfully close to like therapy, right? And personal exploration, because it has to, not because we want to get into necessarily like trauma and things of that nature, but we need to get into who you are as a person, how you process information, how you see solutions, and most importantly, how you view the future. Right? And when you get into that, well, some stuff bubbles up, right? So we didn't start there, and we just started layering things on, we'd have a problem, right? And so as we move into the action conversation, that's the issue, right? Like, in a conversation I had with Austin actually last week, Maliolo, we were talking about that in terms of, things that are forward facing coming down the pipeline in terms of affiliate support and whatnot, and where we fit into the bigger picture. And I think I've said it before, it's just that we focus on the kernel, right? If we know that the L1 is the kernel that the CrossFit ecosystem is built on, because it is, right? And if we know that to be true, the second kernel is the affiliate owner, and that is the core of the operating system of every affiliate. And every single affiliate has a separate kernel. They have a separate core operating system. And the reason that that's important is, as it comes time for you to bring up the conversation you just did, which is like, I need help, right? I need to go download new software to solve my problem. I need a new application, new source code. Unless somebody upgrades the operating system, you can't run the newest apps on the oldest iOS, right? And the same thing's going to happen. So, but everybody's trying to do that. All the solutions that are out there that everybody's seeking blindly to follow the herd and do what everybody else is doing, all they're asking you to do is download the newest ideas, the newest apps onto your old, outdated operating system, you, the person, the individual, the human that's at the core of this whole thing. And just like your computer, it will not be able to process that information, right? So somebody has to upgrade you, and that starts first with, what is your operating system? And that starts with, first, how do you see information? Do you see it as absolutions, or do you see it as curiosity and opportunity?
And we talk a lot about, coaching is about, understanding and looking for behaviors and patterns and working on behavior change. And if you're still running that old operating system and you go and you seek the answers and you just get inundated with templates and do this and do this and do this, all that's going to happen is you're going to have that little spinning wheel of death and you're going to revert back to your default patterns, which is to be overwhelmed and to not do anything but nod your head and go, yep, did that. It didn't work.
Yeah.
Yep, did that. Didn't work. And wondering then why you're not getting further advanced and feeling like, well, that failed or this failed or I'm a failure or all these things without going through, the actual core issue is like, let's start with you. And, I think I've said this 1,000 times before. That was one of the things that attracted me to Affiliate when I first came on was, they care about Lisa, not just the affiliate. That's like secondary, because if you're not running optimally, then nothing else is going to work. Nothing that we work on, nothing that we work towards is going to work, because there's this, clunky old machine still running, MS-DOS that's just not going to run this new advanced version that you want.
Yeah. I think any Apple user has had the rainbow wheel of death at some point, right? First, that starts popping up, and you're like, it's annoying because it's just, and there's no rhyme or reason for how long it's going to be there or whatnot. And so, like, eventually that starts to disappear. And then, like, if you got a MacBook, like, soon after you start seeing the rainbow wheel of death, you start hearing the helicopter inside your MacBook. You're like, is this thing going to literally lift off of my desk? And it's starting to get really hot, right? Like, it's starting to, like, every time you turn the damn thing on, it's like, literally it sounds like a vacuum now. So now you got the rainbow wheel of death and you got the vacuum going, and now the thing's getting hot, and now all of a sudden things aren't necessarily loading fast. And then if you don't solve that problem, what happens? Well, all of a sudden the newest internet routers don't work with the device anymore. The newest applications don't work with the device anymore. And that is the affiliate owner. You guys are the pinwheel of death. You're the hyperactive fan trying to keep the machine cool, because you're trying to run tons and tons and tons of new information, new processes, new source code, new information through an old operating system. And nobody is out there upgrading the operating system, right? Because you got to update the iOS, or you got to update the OS, but you also got to update the hardware, right? Things have to get updated. And that means somebody's got to pay attention to you. And here's the problem. There's no default here, download this. This is the source code and you'll all be updated. Because if that was the case, well, we would all be Elon Musk's fantasy, right? We would all just be robots, right? So we all have to be different, because we all have different experiences. We all have different paths. We all have different ideas and different possible outcomes for the future. So somebody has to ask you what that looks like, because just like there's Macs and there's PCs, there's different versions of different people, and there's different ideas. And most importantly, as it applies to the affiliate in this conversation, there's different ways to achieve success. And somebody has to update the source code. There's nothing wrong with any of the solutions that are out there for anybody that's out there. Maybe you do need more leads. Maybe you need a lead gen company. Maybe you need a systems or templates company. Maybe you need insert X, Y, or Z. The question is, what do you need? And nobody's asking that question because they don't want you to process that information. They just want you to buy their answer, because if they started with you first, they would likely run into a big problem, which is, oh, this will not work on your operating system.
And that's quite often a project that no one wants to take on necessarily, except, us to a degree.
Except us. Here we are.
Here we are.
Company dealing with all of our broken hardware.
But because they're like, oh, that's going to take way more time, way more effort. It's far easier to sell you a in-the-box solution and leave you to figure it out. If it doesn't fit, well, you need to figure that out.
Yeah, it's easier to be like, oh, just like when you call in tech support, they're like, have you tried unplugging it, plugging it back? I swear, right? Do you turn it off, turn it back on?
Yeah. I ring,
right? Or they're like, I see now. Your MacBook is a 2013 model. We don't support that model anymore. So I'm supposed to just go spend $2,000 on a new one? Yeah.
Ideally. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we all joke about that being the default response, but we know that that's what happens. But if you ask one or two further questions, like, you can actually get better at solving for the actual an optimal solution. But I think we need to get better as asking ourselves those questions and not looking for that external source. But that's where a coach will come in handy, because comes into the picture, is that a coach will ask that hard question and those further questions and then sit and hold space for the answer, rather than telling you, well, here's your problem. Was like, why is this a problem for you? Because it might not actually be a problem. You might be able to do everything you need on that 2013 Mac.
Yeah. And not only will a good coach do that, oftentimes even that same good coach, but more often not a bad coach, will instead just try to demonstrate the knowledge that they have possessed in an attempt to validate themselves, to be like, here's what I know, and I want you to tell me how special I am because I know so much. Tell me I got a big brain, right? And their ego will jump to the front of the conversation, and they will try to run in and solve the problem, right? The advice monster comes forward and they're like, I'm going to fix this problem. But the reality is that they don't really care that much about fixing the problem. They care about being the person who fixed the problem. And that's very different than wanting to help Lisa out of her situation or be the person who helped Lisa out of the situation. And there's a lot of people who are drawn to this industry because we are all fixers based on some degree of childhood issue that brought us here. And you have to ask yourself what that is. And that we don't need to dig into that on this podcast. We'll lose anybody who's still left at this point, 31 minutes later. But you might want to ask yourself if the answer that you're giving to people is because you want to solve their problem or because you want to be the one that solved their problem. And a lot of the advice industry that's out there lives in that second side of the camp, right? That's why we've always been the anti-guru. We've always been the anti sort of talking head conversation. But there's no problem with any information. I think the beauty of being alive in today, there's definitely some quirks that come along with being in the information age. Everybody owns everything about us, and that kind of sucks, and it feels very icky. But at the same time, like, life's really never been easier. There's never been more at your disposal. If you have some degree of intention, it's a great time to be alive. But if you have no degree of intention, you can accidentally, reactively turn your life into a giant shit show. I mean, you don't ever have to even leave the couch at this point. Like, everything will just be brought to you, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse with more and more weird goggles on your face. And like, it's going to require us to be more and more intentional of like, hey, did I go outside today? Which is hilarious because that's a conversation that's really pretty common in this adult world now in this day and age. Is like, hey, did you go outside today? Or like, I saw a challenge. It was like, I don't know what it was. It was like 100 hours or 1,000 hours outside in a year. And I was like, first of all, it's not a lot of time, but when you think about, like, it's like basically an hour outside a day or something like that. I don't remember what the challenge was, so sorry about that. But like, I was like, oh, that's actually quite a bit. And I was like, why? That's sad that that's actually quite a bit. Because like, if we went back to like the 60s or even the 50s, like your grandparents would be like, what? Why were you inside? Well, because it's hot out. They're like, it's hotter inside. No, we have air conditioning. You have a what? Air conditioning. Like, how's that work, right? They didn't have refrigerators. Somebody had to bring a block of ice every morning so they could stick it in the ice box to keep food cold. Like, the point is that life has gotten so simple, so easy, that intention has to be the biggest part of your focus. And so as it applies to business, that's the kind of the third part of it, which is, if we know how we process information, and we know how we got ourselves in this situation, because that's what the theory part of it means, then we know essentially how to move into the second part, which is, really kind of how to take action, how to seek information, and then how to implement it, which is, to process it critically and creatively. The third part of that is effectively just, learning to decipher between intention and distraction, right? Because everything all day long will vie for your attention, right? Most people spend their days responding to yesterday's problems. Very few people spend any time focusing on tomorrow's solution, right? And you see this every year in the open, right? Everybody in CrossFit spends all their time responding to how poorly they did in the workout yesterday. And so they react to that: more lifting, more running, more intervals, etc. And the stuff that takes intention, like skill work, gets put off because that doesn't have the same task-based acceptance or completion rate. And then the open comes, and it's a test of how intentional were you with your skill work all year long, and everybody instead chooses to point at standards and changes in standards and everything else to make it feel better that they didn't in fact practice any of their skills. And it's the same thing that happens in business, right? It's much easier to respond to the emails, solve for the problems, address the issues that are going on, instead of not paying attention to that as much as paying attention to what am I doing today to get me to my goal tomorrow. But again, this goes all the way back to that root part of the conversation, which is, where are you trying to get to? And that requires you to know you first.
And it's that avoidance of discomfort. Like we talk about, everything's got easy and comfortable, so we don't go outside because it's all temperature controlled. And we talked about this in our episode with McCoy Media recently, is, coaches and affiliate owners want to avoid having those hard conversations with clients. And everyone's doesn't want to offend somebody, or they don't want to do the uncomfortable things. But that's where our greatest opportunities, if you can have someone who will, and I said this yesterday, I think Gordon Lake did a post, saying, if you've got a family member that looks to be struggling with their health, like having that conversation. And he said, how would you approach this? And one of the things I said back is, like, having hard conversations is when it's done right and from a genuine place, like not just being, an a-hole about it, but when it's done from a good place, like that can be where your greatest growth comes from, because once we have the awareness, then we can make decisions to change. And, but we avoid that. We avoid either having it, being the initiator of that, or wanting to be on the receiving end of that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, there's actually a post that I wrote. It didn't go out yet, but it's the 5 things that the successful affiliate owners do, and one of those things is, the good ones they never stop talking about what they do, which is hilarious when you think about it. But like, most affiliate owners don't tell anybody what they do, but that's a whole different conversation. I think one of the things that's also important about this, maybe it's point 4, the culmination of the conversation, which is, our man's search for answers, or human search for answers, not to gender bias that, but like, so our search for answers leads us to this concept of ease, right? We're looking for a shortcut, where we're looking for the fast answer. We're looking for the quickest possible thing to do to solve the problem the fastest. So can you just tell me what to do? And this is the thing I see from the clients all the time, right? They get themselves in such a pickle. They're like, listen, can we just not do the thing today? Can you just tell me what to do? Right? Like, there's a particular client who I know is going to listen to this podcast and going to be like, hey, you know who you is. And I'm going to hear all about it. And we have to really understand ourselves as a person when you ask that situation, because what you're doing is asking for short-term easy, hard-term long, or hard-term or long-term hard, rather. Said that backwards. Long-term hard, right? Versus what we offer you guys more often than not might seem like short-term hard, but I assure you it's long-term easy. Because the paradox in this, and the irony in this whole conversation, is that the very way that we were taught to possess information and own information did not actually set us up to solve problems, but to be a better part of a system, which means there's not really anything about that operating system particularly that is particularly useful in solving a problem. Instead, it would like to keep you kind of right where you're at, because that's essentially really what it means to be a good member of society, is like, find your place, stay there, do it for 30 to 40 years, retire, then go live your life when you're done contributing, right? Like, and that's a very cynical approach, but there's some truth to it. And but the reality of it is that what needs to happen is you have to learn to process information, because if you want to solve a problem as quickly as you can possibly solve it, trying to find somebody else's advice, understand that advice, put that advice into practice, repackage it and redistribute it and put it into your operating system is way, way, way slower than somebody saying to you, why is the struggle for you? What is the problem for you? Why? How would you like to solve it? Letting them come up with their own answer, and then they can immediately put it into practice. The reason why we are so successful in such a short period of time with the clients who choose to let us play that role in their life is because we don't saddle them with learning. Instead, we inspire them to execute. That's it. Most people would like to basically manipulate you into ownership of information and acquisition instead of inspiring you into execution. And the way that you do that is to give people all sorts of shiny features, modules, downloads, templates, platforms, programs, all these things to keep them busy and in the system, touching stuff and downloading and doing this and talking about how they did the thing and how it worked for them and all these other things. And nobody's doing anything. Or you could just say, I could do that, or we could just get this thing done. So why is it a problem? Right? Let's look at it. Right. And like that's why we can move so fast, because there is no system. You're the system, because you're the kernel, you're the operating system. And so when it comes time to solve your problem, the fastest route to success and the fastest route to solution of your problem, the solution of your pain, is to know that you are the answer. I'm not the answer. Affiliate's not the answer, because you're the answer. We're just going to help you know that you are, in fact, the answer. And that's how you're going to take such fast action. But if you want to solve your problems, whether you come work with us or not, just learn to believe in yourself and your ability to take action and be okay with making mistakes, because taking rapid action and making many mistakes and learning from those mistakes is way better than saddling yourself with this pursuit of information. Because everybody likes to put knowing in the way of knowing. And so they want to wait until they're ready. They want to learn everything they can learn. They want to know what to do. They want to know what success looks like. And here we are 2 years later and they've done nothing. And then when it's time to start the doing, they got to process all that information into action. And it just doesn't help them, instead of being like, what do you want to do today?
And it's almost the, quest for perfection. Like, I need to have everything right, and then I can, pull the trigger. Whereas, it doesn't, need to be that way at all. And once you answer those questions, like, why is this a problem? Why does it matter to you? Why is it so important you do this thing? Once you have clarity around that, then you can just take giant leaps forward and realize the rest are just details. It's just going to fill in the blanks as you go. And
a really funny thing happens in that too, when you do that conversation. You dig into the problems and you dig into the root causes, and then together you come up with a solution. And then you're like, and then you can say they're feeling good about the solution. They're like, yeah, oh my God, it was right there. It was right in front of me the whole time. Duh, gosh. Okay, yeah, I can get that done. And then your coach says, okay, when? And you're like, well, I got to figure out, or learn, downloads, look for, and they're like, probably like the next month. And we're like, how about you get it done by next week? And you're like, error, can't compute. But then you realize real quickly, you're like, actually, I don't really have a reason to not get that done by next week. Okay, I'll get it done. And here's the worst case that happens. You try to get it done by next week, and then you might run into, oh, I didn't realize that I didn't have X, Y, or Z resources or abilities. So we got to start there. Okay, let's work on that. Right. And then it's amazing what happens when someone says, great, let's just get it done by next week. And they're like, well, and that's when you start to realize really quickly, when that happens a few times, how easy it is for us to be like, yeah, I'm going to get this thing done. And then you like put it up on the third shelf. You're like, yeah, look at it. I put it up there. We're getting it done. Why don't you just put it on the lower shelf and just get it done? They're like, oh, that seems scary. Then we can dig into your action aversion, which is the most fun part for me as a coach, is to be like, why are you so invested in staying the same and not taking any action to change?
And that's where that conversation will then pop up. Is like, no, I want to change. This is what I want. I want to be different. It's like, but your actions and intentions are not in alignment from here. And that's having that external set of eyes, as well as, the beauty of that process as well is like, oh, I need these other resources. I need this thing. Cool. Well, when are you going to get that done? Next week? Good. Otherwise, we keep chasing those things. And you're right. We avoid committing to the thing that we say that we want more than anything.
Well, the truth is, the real value, in my opinion, comes from authentically and genuinely having somebody in your corner that's in your corner, not pretending to be in your corner, biased from a position of their own ego and their own ownership, right? Like, most people think that when they hire a coach, that it's normal for a coach to continue to have to teach them something and leverage something and have to work from an angle. The only thing that happens when that coach does that, they don't mean to do it intentionally, I don't think, but when I come into a relationship with a bias and I come into an assumption that I know what to do with you, that gets in
Mm,
the way of me knowing you. Right? Like
mm,
if I boldly assume that I already have your answers and I could just judge you, I can't possibly know you. And you see this all the time in what people pass off as coaching, which is it's not coaching at all. It's politicking and campaigning for why the answer that they're telling you, the advice they're giving you, does work,
mm,
right? And you've been on the other side of this. Anybody that's listening to this, where you've been given advice, and you're like,
mm,
this is hard for me. And instead of getting help with it, you get more answers as to why it is the right answer, right? And somebody's
mm,
defending their information and their advice. And none of that is coaching at all, right?
mm,
All that is basically politics and campaigning for why
mm,
you have the right answers and why you are somehow better than them because you have those answers. And that's the trouble with advice. It assumes that the receiver of advice is incapable of solving their own problems. And the reason why advice even exists is because it allows us to insert our own dominance over another person because of that advice. And so when you step out of that entire relationship as a coach, and instead of standing from a platform of knowing and you get to spend time learning, it's the most authentic space ever. But for somebody who gets to be on the other side of it, in a coaching relationship, and they get to be heard and they get to be understood and they get to be, helped, it is an incredibly empowering place to take action from, because you're just like, even if I have no idea what I'm doing, at least I have somebody who believes in me, not
mm,
somebody who is making me believe in them.
mm. And sometimes that's enough for us or a lot of the time is that gives you the confidence to back your own dream, because you feel like you've got that person in your corner who's not going to judge you, not going to, you know, berate you, but it's like, let's get this done. And that they believe in you more than you believe in you until, you know, you catch on and start that belief. So you can borrow it from your coach.
Well, all I
So I
know is
think,
that's all this thing was ever supposed to be. And so maybe it isn't the right thing, but it's all we're ever going to be. So you can come on
yeah.
over and try it out for yourself.
And I think, that's the powerful um, force that we have and that we do. We see it every day with our clients. So for anyone interested in having more on this conversation, please reach out. There's a link in the show notes. We also have our affiliate engineering seminars starting to roll out soon. There is a link in the show notes for that. Do not miss that opportunity to create your affiliate your way. And as always, please give us a like or subscribe on your favorite platform, as well as head over and follow us on Instagram at Fit Affiliate, so you'll get the latest words of wisdom that pop into your feed in amongst the quarterfinal noise. All right, good sir. Look forward
All right, my
to
friend.
the next one. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's show. Please remember to like and subscribe on your favorite platform. And if you know an affiliate owner, a coach, or entrepreneur that would benefit from hearing our conversations, please share this with them. We love the feedback and support we have from you guys, our audience. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can find all the useful links in the show notes. We would love to connect with you. Keep doing the great work.